Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, Chairman Kane, thank you both for being here today. Mr. Secretary, your testimony over the last several days before Congress, I've heard you speak about all of your supposed accomplishments from your time at the Pentagon. I have to say, your training at Fox News has let you spin months of dangerous dysfunction and incompetence into catchy phrases like restoring the warrior ethos and increasing lethality. But the truth is, it's really been chaos at the Pentagon under your leadership.
Let's talk about this exchange between Representative Mickey Sherrill and Secretary Hegseth.
You've clearly shown you're unable to manage the Department of Defense, but what I'm most concerned about are three specific areas: your operational incompetence, your managerial incompetence, and your budgetary incompetence. So let's start with operational. According to news reports, in your first week on the job, you got confused in a National Security Council meeting and thought President Trump wanted you to stop all aid to Ukraine. In a well-functioning administration, you would have asked for clarification before making that seismic policy shift, but instead you ordered vital military aid heading to the front lines turned around, costing the U.S. millions of dollars and depriving Ukrainian soldiers of equipment they needed to fight Russia. So, Mr. Secretary, can you explain how exactly you misunderstood such a monumental presidential order?
One of many fake news headlines we've dealt with.
So President Trump told you to halt military aid to Ukraine on January 30th?
As is often the case, highly ideological and very ill-informed reporters love to speculate about things they know nothing about in order to spear President Trump and myself.
So it sounds like actually the reporting is correct, because I will say, if it wasn't a mistake, why did aid restart only a few days later?
Again, we would take complete issue with what would some call reporting and others call a hatchet job.
So why did aid start just a couple days later?
I'm saying the reporting is inaccurate, ma'am.
I don't think that's correct. So let's move on to your managerial incompetence. I think we can see why you misunderstood the president, because you're obviously misunderstanding my questions. Less than a month into the job, you fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, C.Q. Brown, and the chief of naval operations, Lisa Franchetti, without cause. And to this day, you still have not provided an adequate explanation for removing them. As far as I can tell, you fired C.Q. Brown because he was black and Lisa Franchetti because she is a woman. So nearly 4 months later, we still don't have a new nominee for Chief of Naval Operations. News reports, and you can contest it, but I'd love to hear your answer, say that you haven't nominated someone because qualified admirals keep turning the position down. So tell me, Mr. Secretary, when will Congress receive your nomination for the next chairman of the next chief of naval operations?
Ma'am, with all due respect, I would suggest not believing every headline you read.
With all due respect, I'd like your nomination. When will we see it?
There has not a single admiral or any military official has turned down a position that's been
So when will we
provided.
see your nominee for the chief of naval operations?
In due time, for all the right reasons.
Again, I think we've seen the managerial incompetence. Okay, let's move on to budgetary incompetence. You missed the deadline to submit a draft defense budget to Congress, which makes it impossible for us to complete our work on the NDAA or appropriations, and makes it more likely you'll receive delays in funding you need for new acquisitions, programs, and other priorities. Additionally, you're blowing money on poorly conceived operations and vanity projects for President Trump. Retrofitting the Qatari jet to serve as Air Force One will cost about $400 million. The parade in D.C. this weekend will cost upwards of $40 million. Your bombing campaign in Yemen cost about $1 billion, and a week later they were having missile strikes in Israel. Your operations in L.A. will cost tens of millions of dollars, and you claim to be cutting costs at the Pentagon, but all I see are wasted dollars better spent addressing our most pressing threats like China. So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
Ma'am, I would just say your list left off securing the southern border.
So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
We make trade-offs every day, and I would imagine what we want to spend on is quite different than what the previous administration did.
Well, I think
we
the
made
American
those changes quickly, and they're reflected in this budget, and we're very proud of them.
I think the American people can see why I'm so concerned about this incompetence. Thank you, and I yield back.
All right, everyone, before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because exchanges like this one tell you a lot more about how power is actually being exercised in Washington than the polished sound bites you see on cable news. What we saw here wasn't just a partisan clash. It was a pretty revealing moment about competence, accountability, and how national security decisions are being defended under pressure. From the very beginning, Mickey Sherrill sets the tone. She's not impressed by slogans. She's not buying the Fox News, ready talking points about restoring the warrior ethos or increasing lethality. And honestly, that framing is important, because what she's really saying is, catchy phrases are not a substitute for effective leadership. She lays out 3 buckets of concern: operational incompetence, managerial incompetence, and budgetary incompetence. And instead of jumping around, she methodically walks through each one. That's not accidental. That's a prosecutor's approach, not a cable news rant. Hegseth doesn't collapse under questioning, but he also doesn't persuade. He relies on dismissal, branding, and ideological framing, tools that work in media spaces but falter under sustained scrutiny. Sherrill, meanwhile, isn't trying to land a viral moment. She's building a record. She's highlighting delays, confusion, firings without explanation, and spending without clarity. Whether you agree with her conclusions or not, the concerns she raises aren't trivial. And here's the bigger takeaway. This exchange exposes the tension between governing as performance and governing as responsibility. Running the Department of Defense isn't about owning the libs or owning the media cycle. It's about precision, communication, and trust with Congress, with service members, and with the public. When answers become slogans and oversight becomes fake news, the system starts to break down. And that should worry everyone, regardless of party. Long conclusion here, because this part matters. What we're seeing more and more in Washington is a collapse of institutional seriousness. Hearings become theater, accountability becomes branding, and competence is assumed rather than demonstrated. Mickey Sherrill's questioning cuts through that fog, not because it's flashy, but because it's grounded. She's asking how decisions were made, who was consulted, what was cut, and why key roles remain vacant. Those are baseline questions in any functioning democracy. Hegseth's responses, on the other hand, reflect a governing philosophy that treats criticism as hostility and oversight as nuisance. That might energize a base, but it doesn't reassure a country facing global instability, rising threats, and strained alliances. You don't have to agree with Sherrill on Ukraine, Yemen, or defense, spending to recognize that transparency matters. You don't have to share her politics to expect clear answers when billions of dollars and national security are on the line. At the end of the day, this exchange isn't about left versus right. It's about whether leadership can withstand scrutiny without retreating into slogans. And right now, that question remains unanswered. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments, especially if you disagree, and subscribe for more long-form political analysis that actually digs into the details instead of just chasing outrage.